excited to bring in a special guest for the very first Mark It Down Live, a guy who's played on tour for, 23 years, I believe, major champion, Stewart Cink. Welcome to Mark It Down Live.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be your inaugural guest.
No, I'm thrilled to have you. And looking at you, I feel like you have it better than me right now. I mean, I've got this thick hair that I have not been able to go to a hairdresser or a barber to get it trimmed up. Whereas you, looks like you do it yourself. You've been doing it for a while, shaving that head.
Yeah, it started in 2008. And
okay.
the only reason I remember specifically when it started is because of, it's actually a pretty funny story. I was in Charlotte, and I live in Atlanta, so it's about a 4-hour drive. And I played in Charlotte in 2008. And on Sunday, I played the tournament pretty well, and I was paired with Phil Mickelson. And we both played really well in the tournament that day and finished high. And neither of us won, but we were both like 4th, 5th place, you know, like in contention. And so I drove home, and I got home about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, and my wife had paused the telecast right on the finishing hole, and that's unusual for her. And I walked in, and she said, "I want to show you something." So we both turned to the TV in the kitchen. In fact, that one right there. And so I was thinking she's going to say like, look at this putt, or I want to show you this bunker shot, or, you know, something they showed. And boy, was I wrong.
What did
she had paused it right on the moment of the handshake when you take your hat off.
Okay.
And at
revealing
that point,
the top of your head. Okay.
Yeah. You know, I took my hat off and went to Phil, and it was like, you know, of course now social distancing, we're not shaking hands, but this is in a time when we still actually shook each other's hands. And so I was still hanging on to whatever hair I had. And my wife used to call what I had at that time the monk band, because I had black, dark hair. I mean, dark right here, just like in a ring right around my, you know, it was balled up here and it was thinning this way. She called it the monk band. And so,
all right.
I finished up knocking in my putt, you know, turned to Phil, take my hat off, and she paused it. And she goes, "Look how bad that looks." and it was right. I mean, I wish I could pull up a picture of it right now, but my head looked like a carton of Neapolitan ice cream. It was white, black, tan, 3 distinct colors. And I know, I mean, since then I've had my own challenges, you know, with my tan line, and it's, you know, they say, you know, notoriety or whatever.
The glowing
no such thing as bad publicity.
Yeah.
But that was the moment when she said, "Look how bad that looks." And I was like, holy cow, that was terrible. Went straight to the back and lathered up and shaved her right down. And that was the first day. That was 2008.
Is it a daily thing?
No, it's, I shave my head now, like, well, since the quarantine started, once a week.
Yeah. It's,
about as
all
often
our
as I
personal
shower.
hygiene is out the window right now.
Yeah. No, it's about two or three times a week. And when I'm playing in the tournament, it's kind of ritualistic. I always shave my head on either the morning of an afternoon round or the night before early morning round. And if I do take a shower the night before an early round, then I'll get up and I'll just rinse off and I won't worry about shaving or anything. And that's kind of the ritual.
Yeah, we have
exciting stuff.
We have lots of rituals, and yeah,
we do. I mean, when you play golf for a long time, boy, I tell you what, you do develop rituals, and you don't even know most of them are happening until someone like your spouse or your kid says, "Why do you do that every day?"
I like to call them more routines. I feel like that sounds a little bit better.
It sounds less crazy. Yeah.
Less crazy. Yeah. But I mean, with all that aside, there are certainly, you know, businesses like a hairdresser, barber, the airlines, hotels. So many people that are thinking about this time with the, you know, coronavirus and those businesses that are struggling. Certainly, they're in our prayers and we're thinking about them. But what have you guys been doing there? You're in Duluth, Georgia. You're home. What have you and Lisa been doing now at home, being isolated?
Well, yeah, I'm sure our story is the same as everybody else's for the most part. We've been really just at home. I'm fortunate I live down south where it's starting to get nice and warm, and the golf course here in my neighborhood has stayed open, and it's actually been super busy. I think people are just like looking for any kind of outlet, and the golfers in the community have been out there. And I'm proud of the club. It's TPC Sugarloaf, and I'm proud of the way they've adjusted and adapted to this changing situation, with single carts only, and all the employees are wearing gloves and wiping things down, and range balls are being cleaned with a bleach solution.
Wow.
All the flags are out of the practice areas. Nobody's touching anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so it gives me a sense of comfort and some pride knowing that it's a TPC, that we're doing the right things. But we started our quarantine here we self-quarantined, I guess you could say. My wife is she's almost to her 4th year anniversary now since she got diagnosed with breast cancer back in 2016. And so at first I thought, she's not really a susceptible group, but because she's been through chemo and her blood counts, are just, they're always monitoring them, and they're great, but they're still you just don't know. And so
be too careful.
Yeah. And so during the onset of the quarantine, my wife was more careful than I thought maybe was necessary. And, I feel like a jerk looking back, but then, so once we kind of started learning more and more, like everybody, about the virus and everything, we decided that I kind of just organically, we became a little bit more sensitive to the social distancing, and she hasn't really been out that much. We've gone to the grocery store. We walk the dogs out in fresh air, but she's not been doing very much, and just keeping up with some chores around the house. And, it's been kind of nice to have some together time with really nothing else on the schedule.
I know it's kind of weird. As golfers, I feel like we've never really had an off season. You could maybe say December is an off season on the PGA Tour, but then maybe I'll go to Australia and play. There's always a tournament to play almost every week of the calendar year. Whereas this, basically the world ranking has just halted. The FedEx Cup standings have just halted here for at least 2 months. Yeah. It's kind of our first experience of an off season, although we really don't know how long it's going to be.
Yeah, and the difference between other off seasons, like you said, one of my favorite quotes of all time was, I can't remember who it was now, maybe Ben On, when he played in the President's Cup in Korea. He said his off season was a 10-hour flight from Seoul to San Francisco to go play in Napa at the Safeway. That was his off season, a 10-hour flight. But this feels more like a true off season, because in December, and if you take off 3 or 4 weeks after the tournaments and you're getting ready, you're constantly intensely getting ready. Like you spend the first, maybe you take the first week off and do nothing. And then you take the second week and you're kind of contemplating all right, what adjustments do I need to make? You're meeting with your coaches. You're looking at statistics. You're, adjusting your workouts, and physically you're getting ready to get ready. And then you spend those last 2 weeks, you're just intensely ramping up your game till suddenly the bell goes off again, the first or second week of January. So it doesn't really feel much like an off season, because you're doing just as much work getting ready as you doing, with the exception of the travel. And this year it feels like, anything. Wow, it's just came to a halt.
Yeah, you're not really, it came to a halt really quick, and you're not really prepping for anything. Yes, you're always trying to get better at golf, but so are you going out and practicing, or are you just kind of playing at the course?
Really neither. I've been out 4 times, I think. And I've hit some balls, and I did some working on, I'm constantly working on little things in my game to try to get better. And I'm trying to use this as a way to really sort of investigate maybe how I can make some bigger improvements. And over this time, we don't know how long it's going to be. I haven't played a round of golf yet, not since March 13th. But I'm starting to, and I feel like some of the pros around here, Atlanta's not exactly like a central point for a lot of players to live, but there's, if you include the Korn Ferry Tour players and a couple of Champions Tour players, and then a lot of young guys that are just coming out of college, there's a couple dozen guys that live around the area. So I'm going to start a game, sort of like a standing game, on a Tuesday or something, where everybody's just invited to come and tee it up, and let's throw $50 in the hat or whatever, and just write down a score. Because I think that's a big part of this, is just not forgetting how to score. You can go to the range and do all your drills you want, but scoring the golf ball is just a whole new skill that you can't learn on the practice range.
Yeah, and then putting that number next to your name at the end of it is something that we've done since we were kids. And it's a good transition to, I got to talk about social media a little bit. Maybe you guys go ahead and throw that on social media, because that kind of puts a little extra pressure that you're going to post your score. But you were one of, I would say, the pioneers with Twitter. I remember in 2009 when you started, I was one of the guys that was giving you a hard time, like, why are you doing this, Stewart? I mean, but obviously now everybody's doing it for the most part. It's hard to find a guy on tour that comes out in his 20s that doesn't have a Twitter handle. What got you started, and what made you think it was a good idea?
Oh boy. Well, I think motivationally, what got me started was, if you look at it from like, why in the world would the first person to do social media was just simply telling somebody else what they're doing. Now that's really what it is.
Right.
And then the feedback you get from that, if you get positive feedback, it's the same thing as like taking a bite of ice cream or eating a chocolate chip cookie or, seeing a great movie. The brain releases chemicals, and it's like, you like that. And you want more of it. That's like, at its core, that's what social media really is. It's almost like an addiction.
Yeah.
The way the body physiologically treats it. You get that like or that response or that like thumbs up, great job, keep it up. You're like, I want more of that. And so, and it grows. And now we've seen exponential growth. I mean, the world is just completely different now. The way that, like, I would say socially it got started for me was it had to do with my kids. And Facebook got started before Twitter. And I've never been a part of Facebook. I just never was motivated to do that. Never. And I'm still not on Facebook. I was watching the program on ESPN, PTI, with Kornheiser and Michael Wilbon, and they were talking about a player in the NBA, and I forget now which one it was, but a player had tweeted that they wanted to trade. And these guys were talking about, the player wants to trade, but the conversation quickly changed over to, what's this tweet thing? And are players not going to need the traditional media anymore? Because that's the way that athletes and people that are a well-known personality could use the media in an interview to get their agenda out there. Well, now you can bypass that. And so 2008, we're looking at social media like, is this the new media? Is this the way it's going to be? And so my son, who at the time was about 15, walks into the room, and I said, hey, what's Twitter? What is it? And he said, it's kind of like a bare bones Facebook. And what you do is you'll say what you're doing in like 140 characters, I think it was, or at the time, I don't know, 40, can't remember now.
Yeah.
You'll say what you're doing, and then people that follow you they'll sign on to get your messages, and they'll just want to learn about your life. And you can show them pictures, or you can just tell them like, my kids' names are Connor and Reagan or whatever. And he said, you'll probably end up with probably like 500 people following you because you're a golfer and you're well-known person, whatever. 500 people. And I'm like, that's 500 fans I didn't know I had before. I'm in. So I signed up for an account, and I wrote my first tweet, and I said, taking the kids to hockey practice. That was my first tweet ever.
Okay.
I'm like, okay, well, is this how you do it? And so, and it turns out that the Twitter world was kind of like waiting for people that they knew to jump on there. And especially as it turned out, the way that I used it at first was I kind of sensed that there was a lot of people using it like a megaphone that were like just announcing things about them, like, I have a new deal with this company, and that was like a megaphone. But I didn't like the megaphone thing. I liked the interaction. Like I had a lot of followers at first, and Connor was wrong. My son, it was more than 500. But
you're about 1 million now, aren't you?
I was, I was over 1 million, and now I'm a little under that because I slowed down quite a bit.
Yeah.
I slowed down, but I'm a little under 1 million. But I had a one-on-one sort of relationship with each one of my followers at first, because they would send a comment and I would comment on their comment. And it was like this big, all these conversations going in all these different ways. And like I said, the brain rules releasing those chemicals. And I was like, this is awesome. Connor said I'd have 500 fans. It was quickly like 5,000, 15,000, 100,000.
Wow.
And most of the people were like, they literally were people that I had no idea would have been into golf. And a lot of them weren't golf people. But the thing about our sport is, if you're not Ricky Fowler, Tiger Woods, obviously, some of the like really high personality people that get a lot of attention in the game, then it's really hard for the public to get an idea of who you really are. You know, they don't know Mark Wilson or Stewart Cink like they know Ricky Fowler. And back in those days, Camilo was the guy who was like, everybody loved Camilo, and his personality was just like coming straight through the camera lens. But ours didn't. But you could learn things about us, like how many kids we had and where we lived and how far we hit our 8-iron and all that stuff.
Right.
But that stuff gets boring really fast. Mm-hmm. And so I felt like for me to get this number of fans up and, you know, have a new base of fans that I didn't know about, I had to really sort of water that garden and just be myself. And by being myself, I bypassed the need for the coverage of golf to show who I was, and I could do it myself, and I could control the story. And I found it really easy and fun, and I got a lot out of it myself. And I learned a lot about my followers, and I still today have a lot of followers on there that are from the early days that I feel like I know them, even though I'll never meet them.
Right. Yeah. And it sounds like you were very engaging. I mean, that's one thing there that I love it too when people are replying to my tweets, and therefore I want to reply to theirs and kind of make a big conversation about the whole thing. And then it gives us a window into the player's personality and not just you know, your rounds of golf, and really get to know the people. And that's so powerful. You see guys now, I mean, Phil Mickelson came to the game really late, but I think he's loving it, embracing it, really funny, great sense of humor. We've seen a new side of him. Max Homa is another guy, a young player that's really taken to it. And, you know, so I think we've learned a lot from you, but any other little tips maybe for my viewers here, myself included, about how to kind of grow our brands using Twitter?
Well, I mean, Twitter now we've seen sort of like the beginning of the sunset. I feel like, you know, I learned most of my stuff from my kids, but it feels like to me that Instagram has kind of been the king right now, and it'll sunset too at some point. But I got on Instagram and I'm on there, and I tried to sort of join the tide, but I got in at a point where I think I was a little too late, and nobody's really the sharks aren't circling waiting for golfers and people like me to join. So my followers on Instagram are really low, and I'm having trouble converting over the Twitter followers. So I'm still like, I still kind of gravitate towards Twitter because I know it. And the biggest thing to me is I remember early on when I was trying to figure it out too, I remember Shaq put out a thing, because he was an early Twitter guy. He put out a little pie chart, and it was like, this half over here is all like information about you and what you do, basketball, golf. And then there's the rest of the pie chart was split up between things like pictures of food you like, other sports you like, you know, just different parts of your life that you are interested in. And I try to stay back from politics and, you know, just things. I mean, I'm interested in politics because I think you almost have to be at least somewhat interested in politics. You have to know where you stand, but I don't feel like that's really my platform to, you know, get up there and rant about, because I don't know it. So I'm part of the stay in your lane crowd. I kind of stay in my lane, but I feel like I have a lot of lanes, and I don't think you have to be an expert to talk about, you know, how you cook ribs, or, you know, whether you like your truck or not. You don't have to be an expert. And so I think just being authentic and being yourself, and you know, there's some people that use it like a text message, like, hey, does anyone know the score of the Collins Hill versus Marietta game today? You know, that's not really. That's not really.
I think you could look that up. No. Yeah.
I think you might be able to. Yeah, you might be able to.
But it's engaging. Yeah, and I thought, you know, 2009 was a good time. You ended up winning the Open Championship just a few months after you started with Twitter, and I still remember that photo you put out. I think it was a breakfast thing, and you're like, which one should I use? And you had some drinking glasses and the claret jug side by side. Which one should I put my orange juice in? Very clever.
Yeah, that was I don't know, just stuff like that popped into my head. I mean, I had at that time I had a really good, you know, audience and the claret jug in my house for a year. That was
utilize that.
Take advantage of times like that. Yeah. So I remember those things too, and it was fun, you know, to kind of have an idea. And Lisa would walk into the room and I'd be snickering, and she'd be like, "Oh no, what is it now?" And I'd have some like the orange juice and the glasses and this claret jug set up. You know, she'd be like, "Oh, it's a monster."
And you kind of talk about expanding your circles. I heard about Max Homa roasting golf swings from a friend of mine who only watches golf because I play golf. And he told me about Max Homa. I'm like, how did he figure this out? It's like, because he went kind of above and beyond. And yes, he used golf as a platform, but he was being really funny. And we saw his sense of humor through all of that.
And again, see, you would never know that watching Max Homa play golf on the telecast on Saturdays or Sundays, because golf it just doesn't show your personality when you're competing. And plus, most of us figured out a long time ago that the best way to be a successful golfer is to be kind of even keel and be, don't let yourself get too far high or low. And that's just translates as boring. It really does. And I'm not making a joke. It just does. It comes off as boring, like we're all robots. And that's one of the biggest knocks on PGA Tour players. But it's an effective way to be a good golfer. You take Tiger Woods out of the equation with the fist pumps and all that stuff. He thrives on that. But most of us thrive more on being very level, which translates as boring.
Yeah, no, it sure does. And I want to transition to two last topics. You've been great with your time here, Stewart. On Mark It Down Live, I'm going to get to everybody two things. And the first one is we're going to talk about golf swing. I personally have a swing thought that was above and beyond the best I had, where a little part of my career where I played the best. And then, of course, when I'm struggling, I always go back to that, hoping it's going to be the key to get me back to where I was. And it really hasn't been. Do you have one particular swing thought that was kind of that thing?
For my own golf?
For your own golf,
I think, for me, I remember back in around, must have been about 2004, I was working with Butch Harmon at the time, and I'm not anymore, but I was at the time. And we kind of stumbled across a little thing that my lower body was doing on my bad shots, and on my good shots, it wasn't. And so I was focused on that, and it was basically just something as simple as like straightening my left leg a little bit earlier. And when you straighten the left leg in the downswing, the only way to do that when your rotation is happening is your left leg straightens, but your hips also rotate, and your hips actually, outpace the rotation of your upper body a little bit. And that's what they call the sequence, right? Well, I saw that my bad shots, that my left leg wasn't quite getting all the way there, and I was sort of sagging to my left side towards the target a little bit with my lower body. And so I focused on trying to get that left leg snapped a little bit earlier, and it just immediately tightened up my ball flight. And in 2004, so I go out to the first couple of tournaments in 2004 and I have a couple of top 10s. And then I win at Harbor Town, which is right there behind you.
That's right. It's to make you feel comfortable.
Yeah. And it was one of those years I had another win later in the year. And I just had a good year. You've had great years. I've had great years. The years that you play your best usually are characterized by a couple of runs of really good tournaments where you're knocking on the door, and you might have a win in there, you might not. But in that year, I had a couple of really good runs where I had 4th, 6th, 2nd, win, 9th, three runs of tournaments like that. And I had 2 wins, and it was mostly because I remember thinking back, the year came down to me hitting good drives at key moments, where I've never been a real straight hitter. I've been kind of a little bit erratic with my driving accuracy, and it's always been a thing I try to get better at. And that year, some key drives where I was tied for the lead on a tough driving hole on the 72nd hole, and I split the fairway. When if I had hit it off the fairway and made bogey, those wins would never ever happen. So that was a big key for me, and it still is. And I'm exactly like you. I still go back to that. I still focus on doing that, and it's still a big part of my game. That when it doesn't always just mean that the leg is straight. It just means I'm rotating properly, my sequence is in the right place, but the ball likes it.
And it sounds like, from what I hear you saying too, is that you didn't shift as much towards the target. You were kind of just rotating there, which is really key.
Well, I grew up in a time, and you and I are almost exactly the same age. I think I'm going to be 47 in May, and
5. Yep.
So we grew up in a time when we were kind of like the end of the reverse C, era in golf, where the lower body would fly towards the target and the upper body would hang back like this. That was the old reverse C. Yeah. And then when Tiger Woods came on the scene, and there's a few guys before him, Nick Faldo, those guys weren't reverse seeing anymore. They were doing all their rotation in the lower body. and the upper body was kind of staying stacked, and they finished over their left foot, and we were like, what is this?
Yeah.
So we had to sort of experience that, and I was a reverse C golfer early on, and I had to switch that around, and that what I'm describing from 2004 is kind of like the opposite of the reverse C. And that I did all my, I felt like I squared the club face up with my lower body, and I kept the club face moving towards the target with my upper body, and it was the exact opposite of reverse C. And it produced really good hitting for me for a long, long time. And like I said, those key drives, those drives are ones that you never forget. You know, it's like making a putt that counts or hitting a drive that you never forget. They're burned into your soul and your memory, and you just want to recreate those. And so, but that was kind of the essence of it for me.
Well, that's a great psychology tip for all the viewers, really. Just all those great shots you hit, especially in those moments where you're feeling very uncomfortable. Those are the things to lean on when you get back in that same situation. I think of some of your wins. Obviously, the 18th hole there at Firestone, very demanding tee shot. That fairway's maybe 25 yards wide, but you really only have about 15 yards to hit it in. Travelers as well, obviously at Turnberry. The one behind me here, though, very big fairway. However, still important to be there, within the OB stakes on the right. And
I've been outside those before too.
Do you have any memories? I think when you think of when someone says Harbor Town to you, you've won there twice. Where does your mind go? Do you have a particular memory, story, something about Harbor Town?
Well, one of the great traditions at Harbor Town is at the conclusion of the tournament, there's usually, if it's good weather, there's a lot of boats out there in the Calabogie Sound. And when the winning putt drops, if it's a tap in or if it's a long putt or chip in or whatever, those boats all kind of like, they honk their horn all at the same time. And that was probably the memory that I have that I hold dearest from that tournament is, and I've got 2 wins there. So I've heard the horn twice. Nice. Is that, when you finally knock that ball in and the horn goes off, I'm like, you know what? I'm glad all those boats are making their horn noises, but the loudest horn's going off right inside here where my body is finally going, thank you for ending this.
Yes. Yeah, there's something about the relief of a victory. I mean, yes, it's adulation and it's excitement, but there is a bit of a relief.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it's because the process of winning on the PGA Tour is just so challenging, and it's getting more and more so every week. At least it was until everything stopped. But it's just it's a challenging gauntlet to go through, and it's exhilarating and it's challenging and it's difficult, but it's also like amazingly, fun, and it's a ride. It's quite a ride, and the end of it is there's a lot of emotions, but relief is a big part of that, and that's why I think you see people win and they like. There's a lot of this, and it's not always like the Tiger Woods or the Payne Stewart, the fist clenching, the mean face. Ian Poulter, he's got the look. But it seems like when people tap in for their wins, there's a lot of like. And I think we can all identify with that.
Yeah, Ian's got to go to the doctor and get his ribs.
Yeah.
Anyway, Stewart, thanks so much for your time. And I hope we can get out there sooner rather than later on the PGA Tour, chasing that next victory. Look forward to seeing you out there.
I look forward to it too, Mark. And best of luck with the show. And I'm glad to be your first guest.
All right. Being first, though, means you're going to have to get on again.
Okay. Well, you just tell me when. I think I have time coming up.
All right. Thanks, Stewart.
Okay. Have a good one.